Hi, welcome. Tonight we're very privileged and I'm quite excited because we've got a guest speaker who knows a lot about his subject but has promised me that he has broken it down so that it's the basics for people like me who don't know much about the Kabbalah, but as a key to the intuition. So I'm going to hand you over to Finian Heavey and let him enlighten us.
Right, good evening everybody. Can you all hear me and see the green screen? Can I have a wave? Okay. Yeah. So what is Kabbalah? In a couple of sentences, it's the esoteric system of the Jewish people that we find throughout the Old Testament. And of course, some of it carried into the New Testament because Jesus and his disciples, most of them were Jews. It's also something that's used in the Western mystery tradition as a basis for a framework, if you like, for magical use. But that's not really what I'm talking about tonight, although it'll probably get a little bit of a mention. We go on to the next slide. This is a diagram, a basic model of the tree of life diagram, which is central to Kabbalah. If you look at it, what you will see is 10 spheres laid out in a pattern. Take my word for it, there are 22 paths linking them together. You've also got color. And if you look very closely, you've got planetary symbols as well. And so all those elements come together in Kabbalah. Now, at the bottom is the physical world that we live in. At the top is divinity as we understand it. And you see there is a straight path between the two. With all these things, there's two-way traffic. And I'm going to just build on that basic diagram and talk a little bit about some of its dynamics. Next slide, please. Now, there's two ways of doing this. The Western side tends to think of it as energy descending top down. If you look at the other one, which is the Jewish version, from a late point of view, you'll see what they're doing there is they're ascending. And that one has also got the names of the various patriarchs and things that are involved that act as archetypes. So, and basically what we're thinking about is Malkuth at the bottom, which means kingdom, is the same as Blavatsky talks about as Globe D in The Secret Doctrine. So one side, the left-hand side is what we call involution in Theosophy, and the right-hand side is what we call evolution, where you're making the journey back up again on the arc. Okay, let's have the next slide. You've got three pillars in the Kabbalah. The left-hand side, 3, 5, and 8, is called severity. That's all to do with about contraction and holding things in. And you've got the right-hand side, the pillar of mercy. That is all about expansion and giving things out. In the middle, you've got a pillar of integration where you find the balance between giving, holding back and giving out. For example, at number 4, Hesed, and there's a number of spellings of it, that's the middle one on the pillar of mercy, that one, that equates with Abraham that we've all heard of. Because in the Jewish tradition, he was the most generous person that anybody had ever met. He was always thinking of the other person, giving, 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 giving. let's have the next slide. As well as the 3 pillars that you can see there, there are 3 triangles. The bottom one is psychological. The middle one, which I've done in yellow, is ethical. And the top one is spiritual. And the top one is a lot more abstract than the psychological one, the blue one in the middle. So you've got a balance. These are triangles. You've got holding in, giving out, and the synthesis between them. And at the ethical level, in the middle is what we call Tipereth, which means beauty. That's the downward pointing yellow triangle, and that's the synthesis of the whole tree, because if you look, there are paths going almost everywhere from that one. So that means synthesis. We'll have the next slide. Click it again. Once, that's it. There's the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. There's a lot of information there. You don't need to know it all. They join together on the paths in the Hebrew system, because there's 22 paths and 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. The interesting thing is they've got numbers, they've got names, and they've got objects. At the top there, Aleph is number 1. It means an ox. And if you look at the original glyph, it's a bit like a letter A on its side. But if you turn that through 90 degrees, you've got ears and the muzzle of an ox, the horns and the muzzle of an ox. So there is a logic to the hieroglyphics. Click again and we'll have the next slide. This just simplifies it a bit. There they are again. Their names and what they stand for. There is a mistake on there. There's a typo. I didn't do this. I nicked it from somewhere. But pay doesn't mean month. It means mouth. Now, one of the interesting things in Hebrew is they had no independent number system. So if they wanted to say 1, they would write Aleph. If they wanted to say 70, they'd write Ain. And so on in combinations. The highest that they ever counted for was 1,000, which was a double-sized Aleph. And you sometimes see that in writing. It means that it's the highest possible number. They didn't go any higher than that. They didn't think they needed to in their everyday way of things. So there are the Hebrew letters. But the interesting thing is they're the object, the letter itself, and the numerical sequence. Let's have the next slide. Now I'm looking here at the 10 Sefirot, and I'm working up the tree. They have different spellings of them because all of the Sefirot, these spheres, are considered sacred. So they don't always pronounce their name the same way. This one is a Jewish source that gave me this, and he calls it Malkus. Everybody else would call it Malkuth, but that's too sacred, so they change the names a little bit sometimes. That refers at the bottom to the earth that we live in. Its real name is kingdom, but psychologically it means nobility of spirit, receptivity, because it receives all the energy pouring into it from all the other paths. Next one up is Yesod, which of course is the integration of personality. Hod, humility, gratitude, the ability to compromise. Netzach, victory and ambition. Are you going across the, Netzach is the green one. So Netzach is more outgoing than Hod. Let's click to the next slide. Netzach's there and Hod is the orange one. Going on up the tree, Tippereth is the one in the middle that we mentioned. Gerbora is the constraining one on the left-hand side. Strength, restriction, discipline. Hesed is the one that we mentioned. Loving kindness, giving, and momentum. Dath is knowledge. But the interesting thing is knowledge and creation go closely together. That's why it talks about focus and awareness. Yeah, you can do. That is a hole in the middle there. Up one. In the hole.
In the hole.
Because it's not really a Sefirot. It's the place where Malkuth was in Adam's time before the fall. But they use it as an 11th one because some schools of Kabbalah don't bother with the top one at all because it's too holy. But if they do that, they use Dath instead. Go forward again. And so Bina at the top is the feminine one. Chokmah is wisdom and intuition, which is masculine. And at the top, Kesa is super consciousness, the inclusion of everything. So that gives you a little bit of a psychological breakdown as to what the different Sephiroth mean. Kesa, Chokmah, and Bina together relate to the mind. All the others, from Das down to Malkuth, relate to the emotions. So you've got mental capacity and emotional capacity thrown in. If you think about it, there are 7 emotional Sephiroth. We don't worry too much about Das, from Hesed down to Malkuth. And they are very like the 7 rays. You could argue the toss a little bit as to which one's what, but I think they overlap. Let's have the next slide. This is what we call the middle pillar exercise, which is a more modern invention. It comes from the Western tradition. And what they're doing there is they're using mantras to energize the centers. You imagine them in your own body. And it's a form of yoga. The top one, the mantra for Ketha, is Hey. When you go down to Dath at the nape of the neck, it's Yod Elohim. Going down to the heart center, it's Yod Hey Vov Hey Vadath, which means the Lord of Knowledge. Yesod, the chant is El Shaddai, or Shaddai El Che, Master of the Creatures. And the bottom one, Malkuth, is Adonai Haaretz, which means Lord of all the earth. And you would spend some time chanting those and visualizing the energy centers kick in, almost as a form of yoga. And I put one of them yoga charts next to it to show that in fact there are similarities. One difference is that Westerners don't habitually be cross-legged, so they've put the base chakra on the feet because the feet touch the earth. One thing I do need to say is that in the Hebrew system, it's not Gnostic in the same as the Greek. The Hebrew system says that the earth is just as sacred as Ketha, the highest abstract of heaven, is. The problem with the earth rests with human beings who've got 2 natures, the spiritual nature and the animal nature. And it's our animal nature which is abusing the earth. It's not the earth itself. And they base that on the last verse of the first chapter of Genesis, when God saw everything that he had made, and it was all very good. So all of the 10 Sefirot are equally sacred. We'll go to the next slide. I've said a bit about the Hebrew way of things. This is a Western diagram. It's the same diagram with the same paths, but what they tend to do in the West is they put a tarot card on each path, because the tarot card represents, in pictorial form, the union of the two Sephiroth and what it means. Chokmah is wisdom, and mercy is the Hierophant, for example. That one's relatively, some of those are quite tricky to work out, but that's a custom in the West. People like Paul Foster Case have written books on what tarot card goes there. And just to be confusing, the same thing's true of the Hebrew letters. There isn't one absolute system. There's about 4 different ways that you can put the tarot cards on that tree, and there's at least 6 different ways you're allowed to put the Hebrew letters on. Basically, what you do is you use your the system that you were taught by your teacher until you've outgrown it. Using the tarot cards in this way is a relatively modern thing, dating from the middle of the 19th century, when Alpheus Levi discovered that there were 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet and 22 tarot trumps, and there had to be a relationship. And in the West, we've tended to go with that. Okay, so basically, the path of integration in the tarot, remembering this, or in the Kabbalah, I should say, remembering that both number 10 and number 1 are equally sacred, is to walk up the tree. And depending on how much detail you want to do it, you can do it quickly by trying to make sense of the integration, or you can visit each one of the 10 levels and learn the lessons that you find in those. That's what I've got for you. It starts you off. Thank you very much indeed.
Oh, sound gone.
We've got to put our sound back on.
It's on.
Okay. Unmute yourselves, please. Over to you, Teresa.
Okay, thank you. I've just got to put myself back as host.
Yep.
Not sure how I do that.
I can do it.
Sally's done it.
I've done that. There you go.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you know what you're doing. What I'll do is I'll mute everybody again so that the video doesn't jump around. Lovely. Excellent. Well, thank you for that. Fascinating. I'm sure we'll have some questions after the meditation. But for now, I think we will have our group meditation and we can ponder on those questions and ask Finian after the meditation. Right. So if you just let everything that you've just learnt and all the questions that you have, just let all that go for now. And I want you to come into an intention of coming together as a group for the group meditation. So we will do this by coming into our heart center and connecting with the others in the group, both who are live this evening and those who are following through the recording. And we do that by repeating the affirmation of love. So I will repeat it, and if you say it to yourself, either silently or out loud. In the center of all love, I stand. From that center, I, the soul, will outward move. From that center, I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group, and throughout the world. Now I invite you to close your eyes, and we'll begin by connecting with the earth. So I want to ground your energy. So I want you to imagine that you're sending a connection down, sending roots down into the earth, either through your feet or through the base of your spine. And now I want to come into this present moment. So just noticing your body sitting on the chair. Just notice the clothes on your skin. And now take your awareness to your hearing and just allow sounds to come in. Simply notice. And now I invite you to take that awareness and bring a gentle focus to the breath. So just watching the breath as it comes into your body, watching the breath as it leaves. Feel your physical body beginning to relax. And as you do so, take the breath a little deeper, down through a channel, right through the very center of your body. So keep a gentle focus on the breath. If you find that your mind is distracted, as soon as you notice, come back to the breath. And come back without judgment or criticism. Come back with loving kindness. And keeping that focus on the breath, just let it take you into a very quiet, peaceful place inside. You are still aware of thoughts passing into and moving through your mind, but you keep a gentle focus on the breath. so that you come to simply observe the thoughts. And now bring your focus to the center of your chest. I want you to breathe into your heart center. And I want you to imagine that your heart is filling with love and with light. And that it is opening to connect you to your soul, your higher self. So the heart acts as a portal to open to your highest. You can imagine the heart center opening. If you envision a bud, a beautiful lotus flower bud, and see the 6 perfectly formed petals slowly unfolding as you focus on the breath. So that your heart is receptive. Now I want you to imagine you are bringing white or violet purple or gold light down through the crown of your head. And this is coming down into all 7 of the major energy centers or chakras associated with the spine in your body. Now imagine that your heart center especially is the vessel to receive and distribute this light throughout your physical body. So as the light pours in through your crown and reaches your heart, so it is sent to every cell in your body, filling your bloodstream with light, filling your cells, muscles, organs, bones with light. So imagine that your whole physical body is filling with this purifying, cleansing, healing light, strengthening your body, your immune system, calming your emotions, anchoring peace in your mind. So continue to let your whole body fill with light. You may start to lose awareness of your physical body. This is fine. Now let that light radiate out into the etheric body or the energy field that surrounds your physical body. Filling your whole being with this light. Now imagine that you are radiating this light out to fill your home with light, so that it touches the energy fields of all living things that reside in your home with you. Now allow this light to radiate out into the street upon which you live. Let this lighted love flow out into your neighborhood. Let it flow out into your community. Continue to let it radiate out until it flows and fills your whole town or city. Now imagine that your light is connecting with the light radiating out from all of the members of this group. And together we fill this nation with light. Now let it radiate out further to fill this part of the world. To fill this hemisphere. To fill the southern hemisphere. So that this light now encompasses the whole of our planet, the whole world. Now imagine that you can see our planet from space and you can see her surrounded by this light. And you see it flowing down and healing her, restoring the balance in nature. So that the air and the water are clean and fresh and pure. There is a healthy ozone layer. There is a reversal of the damage. And our planet is able to heal. See all the animal and the plant life flourishing. And mankind taking our role as rightful guardians of these kingdoms. Now see this light flowing into the hearts and minds of all of mankind. Whether it be consciously or unconsciously. Igniting the desire for peace, invoking the will to good, and helping to establish right relations within each individual, between individuals, within families, within communities, within nations, between nations, throughout our human family. Feel this light lifting our awareness and the collective consciousness of all. Allow your mind to envision a way in which we could live in peace and harmony with all. Visualize these energies unifying and eliminating all divisions within humanity. Healing and transforming human consciousness and establishing right human relations. Now continue to hold a space for this light to radiate out. And as a group, we hold a space for this energy and this healing. The energy pouring down through your crown and your heart open, radiating out this lighted love. Joining with all groups throughout the world who are working with the light in this way. Continue to hold a space. And now I invite you to gently open your eyes And we will repeat the wheel prayer, the great invocation together, which powerfully distributes these energies. So repeat this great invocation with conviction. And we'll pause briefly between each stanza where you have a moment to visualize the words playing out. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you very much. Because when you join in a group meditation, you hold the energy for the group. And when you can stay deep in that meditation, you're helping everyone in the group stay deep in that meditation, and therefore the effects are far greater. So thank you. Namaste. Now I'm going to unmute you, and if you have a question or a comment, or you want to add something to Finian's talk or ask something specifically of him, you'd be welcome to do that. If you don't want to appear on the video, pop your question in the chat and I will read it out. So I will allow you, if you want to unmute yourself, and you can open up so you can see each other. There you go.
Perhaps if I started off, Teresa, there's something I never really realized. Those 4 verses from the Great Invocation would fit almost exactly on the 4 main centers going down the tree.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. I mean, all wisdom, you know, when we start making these connections between different sources of ancient wisdom, it's all the same wisdom, but it's beautiful when you start to see those connections. And often it's deep in meditation where those things pop up. So that's lovely. Oh, Michael, if you unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you to Finian for a very interesting talk. Again, a vast subject and hard to get up-to-date knowledge on. For anyone who wants to learn more about it, I mean, I've kind of been aware of it for a long time, but to learn, there was only kind of Eliphas Levi and Diane Fortune and things like that. So I've dug a book out.
Yeah.
This guy has been reading and writing about it for about 40 years and is still alive now. So this would be a very, very good introduction for people.
Just remind everybody who the author is.
It's Will Parfitt.
Ah, yes.
Will Parfitt, excellent.
He's done some excellent stuff.
Yes. The other thing I wanted to say was, in terms of connections, this will give people something to think about. The Lord's Prayer was written by a Kabbalist, and so if you look at that, there's elements of Kabbalism throughout it, and I think that just goes to show basically how ancient and how infused kind of the tree of life and Kabbalistic knowledge is in all of society, kind of for a couple of millennia, and it's just one of those things where the more you look, the more you would see connections. So thank you for the introduction.
In fact, I'd say it's probably about 5 millennia.
Well, I didn't want to go down that route. When you said it, I've done my own research onto this, and although it's kind of ascribed as kind of a Jewish mysticism, I have a feeling it was around before then.
Oh, yeah.
But not many people have come to that conclusion, so I'm impressed with that.
I mean, you see, one of the challenges is Jesus and his disciples and the people in the first century who started the church were all Jewish. And therefore, some of them would have had a knowledge of the Kabbalah. It's absolutely all over the writings of St. John as well. But then we hit a snag. By the time we get to about the 4th century, the church didn't understand Kabbalah much. So it tended to shut it in a box and forget about it. And the church now is not Kabbalistic. But the Kabbalah is still there, because the interesting thing is that because of the overlap between Greek thinking and Hebrew, because the Greeks were in the Jewish lands for 400 years, the Greek language has taken on Kabbalah as well. So if you look at the Greek text of the New Testament, there's loads of Kabbalah in there too. But the church tends to ignore that one.
Yes, and it's more at the core of secret societies these days.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you. Just see if there's anybody else. Anybody else got any questions? Oh, Ted.
Ted.
Yeah, I'm just interested in your particular comment about the relevance of some of the Kabbalah to the Old Testament in particular, and as my own knowledge of that is somewhat sketchy, wondered whether you could perhaps point me in any direction where I'm reasonably familiar with the tree, I might find some interesting correlation.
Well, I mean, let me just think about that for a moment. One of the things is, if you look at, I'll send you a copy of that diagram.
Thank you.
Because I only showed it very briefly.
Yeah.
But if you look at the relationship, for example, between the 10 spheres and some of the patriarchs that are central to the Old Testament, they've all got their places on the tree. And there's a reason why they're there. Because it's about the levels of knowledge and the levels of behavior that they had. I mean, for example, King David is called beloved. So that would have put him quite high up. But he committed a murder to run away with somebody's wife. So they've put him down at the bottom. Because he knows he shouldn't have done that, but he did. And, you know, you can see more and more correlations. In the middle at Tippereth, they put Jacob, because he was the one that wrestled with the angel and received an initiation and had his name changed. That didn't happen to everybody. So there's a first step correlation. Have a look at these figures in the Old Testament.
Yes, yes.
A lot of it's in Genesis, and see how it begins. See where the patterns are, because it's all about patterns.
And just as a second part to the question, can I say to you, have I seen somewhere the correlation with that middle Sephiroth? I can tend to call it Tifereth because that's how it, with Jesus Christ?
Yes. I mean, there's because that is the place in the divine scheme of things where Jesus Christ or the Messiah belongs. And there's an interesting passage. The book of Isaiah, chapter 53, is the great prophecy about Christ. And there's a line about 2 verses in. It talks about a root rising on arid ground. He was despised and rejected of men. In him we saw no beauty, it says. Now, the literal translation of Tippereth is beauty. So that's a denial of Messiahhood. This is where when you know some of the words, and because some of the names of the Sefirot are a bit like code words, and they jump out at you. But that's one that I find very interesting. In him we saw no beauty. In other words, he can't possibly have been who he said he was according to us.
Finian, I have a question. I was intrigued.
Teresa.
Yeah, I was intrigued as you were going through that you said the intuitive mind was masculine and the more, from memory, the more logical mind was feminine.
Well, you see, what we're talking about here, if you think about, this is the way I would express it. If you think about the process of the conception of a child, the male gives the sperm that goes to the female, and the female nurtures it. And they take that general set of ideas and develop it, because you need both. You need the initial giving and then the reception. I'm not just talking about the biological function. I'm talking about it in very general terms. But I would also make the point, which I didn't say, because I was trying not to use up an awful lot of time. If you look at the 2 pillars of the tree, the feminine one starts with Bina and Saturn at the top, which is usually shown as black. But on that one, you've got Hod, which is attributed to Mercury. And that is obviously masculine. So it's not a total polarity, there's a crossover. And it also, with Chokmah and Hesed, underneath that you've got Netzach, which is obviously Venus, and obviously feminine. So it's not a complete
Polarization,
division. It's a bit like a yang and yin symbol. There's a bit in each, but they tend to give them the basic characteristics. By the way, the other thing I could have said, the tree diagram that I was using, that's like somebody standing in front of you. If you're thinking about yourself, you have to flip it.
Okay.
But that's just a convention. But so it very cleverly does involve masculine and feminine. But they're both there, and they're throughout Kabbalah, they're almost dancing with each other.
Which is the yin and the yang, isn't it? Yeah.
But I mean, the other thing that I didn't mention is very closely related to Malkuth, because Malkuth has got feminine characteristics as well, is the concept they call the Shenikah, which is the living presence of God shown as light, which lives in Malkuth. But that's female. So the masculine and the feminine are very cleverly all there. And if you want to go deeper into it, because of the creative process, they say that if you take an individual Sefirot, the one immediately above it in the sequence is masculine, and the one immediately below it is feminine, because it's the creative process. But that's getting deeper into it. But you know, I was being very simple on purpose and concentrating on the integrational side, which is what you suggested.
Yeah.
But it's much, much more complicated than that when you sort of stretch it out a bit. The other thing I would say is, without getting too complicated, the tree is very elastic. You can stretch it. Because one thing I didn't mention is 4 worlds or realms of existence which exist in there. And for example, there are 10 spheres I mentioned, but if there's 4 worlds, that gets you to 40. And when you get 40 days and 40 nights, what that's talking about is understanding the universe in a slightly opened out form. Because the way I showed it in 10 was compact. But if you stretch it, the totality is actually 40, because it's 10 in each of 4 worlds. I don't want to get too complicated, but that's another one. Ted was saying, where do you find it? If you see, whenever you see 40 in the Bible, it's code word for this was fairly comprehensive. And that's the way they would understand it.
Wow. All right. Have we got any other questions? No. Wow. That was marvelous. That was truly amazing.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Before I go, can I just say something to Ted that would interest him? I've discovered, having had the privilege of studying online with using YouTube, because there's a lot more Kabbalistic stuff out there in English now than there used to be 10 years ago. And having studied some of that, I'm fascinated that a lot of the Kabbalistic rabbis are actually expert astrologers as well.
Right.
And the reason for that is, if you think about it, they spent generations in Babylon, where astrology was the big thing. Well, the Kabbalistic rabbis who want to get into the inner meaning of it are quite astrologically aware. And that fascinated me. I've been listening to one rabbi from Jerusalem who broadcasts on YouTube. And every month he does the meaning of the month from an astrological point of view as one of the 12 signs and its psychological implications. And it's absolutely wonderful.
Is it possible to send me just one link and I'll take it from there?
Yeah, I'll try and find you.
Yeah, if you can. And thank you for mentioning it. And thank you for a smashing talk tonight. It was really, really...
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Well, particularly the way you answered the questions as well. I mean, as you say, it's such a multi-dimensional topic.
Now, before we go, there's one other thing I'll just say to everybody. I'm doing on Sunday with the European School a talk on Jacob's Ladder, which is another aspect of Kabbalah. And then I'm doing a basic introduction at the Nottingham Lodge meeting, which is being advertised on, I think it's Saturday the 24th, is it? It's that Saturday. I'll double check. I think I'm right. At 2 o'clock, the general introduction to Kabbalah, because people want me to rake out that old chestnut. 22nd, Sally says. So I get my 4s mixed up because of the 4th Saturdays. I just about count to 4.
24th, it's a long day.
Is it? Well, that means it's the 22nd then.
That's lovely. Well, if anyone wants details for those, they can ask me or ask.
Yes.
Yeah.
By all
Yes,
means.
please.
Thank you all
Yes.
very much. It's been fun.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'll say good night and I'll say thank you very much. Next week, I'm going to start a series of talks focusing on each of the 7 major chakras. So more in depth. We'll start with Muladhara next week. And I just want to bring in basically all the different aspects, so we can just really understand these chakras in a little bit more depth and understand the interplay between them. So thank you very much and have a lovely
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.